Hi there, it's time to get up to scratch. Today, we're going to look at the New Zealand Curriculum for Computational Thinking, Progress Outcome 5. This video is for students who want to show that they have achieved this outcome, or for teachers who want to know more about how to assess their students. Let's begin. Progress Outcome 5 says, within authentic context and taking account of end users, students independently decompose problems into algorithms. They use these algorithms to create programs with inputs, outputs, sequence, selection using, comparative and logical operators, as well as variables of different data types, and iteration. Students determine when to use different types of control structures. They document their programs using an organized approach for testing and debugging. They understand how computers store more complex types of data using binary digits, and they develop programs considering human-computer interaction, HCI, heuristics, practical method or shortcuts that yield solutions sufficient for either a limited time frame or a deadline. That is very wordy, especially that last page there. So let's deconstruct these terms a little bit. The first thing I want to point out is that we've done a lot of these already in Progress Outcomes 2, 3, and 4. And this phrase here, selection using comparative and logical operators, as well as variables of different data types, is the biggest difference when we're looking at the types of code that we will use if we're using Scratch, or possibly at this level, a different language such as JavaScript or Python. Now, we've used comparative operators before. Those are ones basically saying, is something bigger than another thing, or is it the same, or is it smaller than? Logical operators allow us to check multiple conditions or check the negative of that condition. So we could be checking to see if something is not equal, or if one thing is equal and a second thing is equal. Variables are really important to programs and anything you're doing. They allow you to kind of store data and values and manipulate those. So generally in Scratch, you've got two main ones, which are numbers and strings, which are words. Those last 2 pages of the progress outcome that I put are a lot of theory things. And to be honest, the second page with looking at the types of control structures, you should be able to easily pick different control structures. So that's the different control blocks that are using, and you should see in the programs a variety of those things. To add comments into your coding in Scratch, you can just right click and select add comment. And you can move these comments around. This code will add two numbers together. So it's kind of helpful once you start getting really complicated programs to actually put these comments in and around your coding. So that's what it means by documentation. The last one is, again, a lot of theory, and that would probably be best served by discussing outside of the context of Scratch. So let's begin looking at the blocks that we will be using in these programs. So as I talked about it before, we've got our operator blocks, and we've used most of them, or we should have had some exposure to all of them. Now at this level, we can start using the logical operators, which are the and, the or the not block. The next thing is the variables, and if you watch my video on variables, it explains about how you can create variables as well as lists, and that can be something quite useful in this. Let's take a look at a few examples of some programs you might see that are at Progress Outcome 5. So in this example, I've created a simple loop with a variable that's set at timer, and every time the loop goes through, that variable decreases by 1. So it repeats 10 times, so the timer starts at 10, goes to 0, and then at the end it says time's up. So that's one way that you can use a variable, is to keep track of time. And you could actually even use variables within that. And so in this really simple example, I'm just using 4 total blocks. I've got, when the flag is clicked, I'm using the variable block to set the score. So it's really important to, when you're using variables, to set them to the values that you want at the beginning of your program. I should probably put it like that to make that more clear. And then every time the sprite is clicked, that score is going to go up by 1. So I click on it a few times, and if I restart the program, you'll notice the score resets back to 0. So that's how you can show that you can meet progress outcome 5. So this program is quite short, but it's quite complicated and involves some very highly technical blocks that I put together. So notice how I've used these sensing blocks to ask, and it gives me an answer. And I've set my variable here called number1 to that answer. Now this answer it's a variable in essence. It will change every time you ask a question. So the second time here, we're asking what's your second number, it will actually overwrite whatever number I put in there with the first number still saved in number1. So then later on, I can use, as soon as I get that answer, I can use a say block to have the number 1, which is the first number put in, and the answer, which is the second one in. And it can add that up, and then it can use a join block all in the same line of code to give me my answer. So let's try that out. I can add 2 numbers together. Let's try 3 plus 6. And it says the answer is 9. Now, we talked about being efficient in your programming in, I believe, in progress outcome 4. Now, this is one good example of being efficient. I could have done set number 2 to answer right here and then added number 1 plus number 2, but knowing that that answer is already there and the number is there, I could take that step out. So even though in this program it's probably mere fractions of a second, the more you do that, especially if you're doing repeated calculations, the better that will be. So hopefully now you can kind of understand how these variable blocks can be used, and knowing that including them is the really big important step to getting to New Zealand Curriculum Progress Outcome 5. You might also at this point think about trying different languages, because once you've got the concepts down, learning the syntax and how you write specific things is probably more valuable, because I don't think you're going to get a job coding in Scratch, but you might get a job coding in JavaScript or Python. And also remember that these examples that I've just shown you here are really simple. Any program that you make should be a little more complex with a little more moving parts. I've been really basic. I haven't even put the background in, and I've just used the basics cat. So when you are creating your programs, or if you're looking at your students' programs, remember that it's not just about putting about 5 or 6 lines of code. That being said, if you can explain how something this short works, then you probably do have a fairly firm grasp of progress outcome 5. This is where I'm going to kind of end. I believe there are some progress outcomes beyond this, but Scratch is probably not the program that you want to be using. So enjoy your programming journey, review any of the videos that you've got, and happy programming. Don't forget, like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.